Good evening and welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. Joining once again as my co-host is RB Bhatia. I would say his name, but then everyone just in his family that I work with just makes fun of me because I can't say his name right. That's okay. He has accepted the nickname RB, which is great, and we're going to be talking about struggling through adversity. It's really a continuation of my monologue from Sunday. We're going to get some more opinions from the great RB, and we'll see where the conversation goes. I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
RB, my friend, welcome once again. Cheers to you.
Cheers.
So now all you got to do, our glasses are pretty similar, except I've got a bullet in mine.
So if you notice my glass, it's got a B on it, as in RB.
Yeah, that's
great.
Woo. So how's your week been so far, my friend?
It has been really interesting, and now it's about to get a lot more interesting. I think this year is off to a good start, and thanks to a lot of good friends, such as yourself, I'm getting motivated to do more. I set no goals for myself this year, other than the book, but I have no goals, no resolutions, just to live the best life possible.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty big goal.
That's
to live the best life possible, right?
I mean, for me, whatever that is.
Yeah, sure. And this is where, I we've talked about it before. I'll set some themes nowadays as to what I want to do. And I try to, in my themes, to make them pretty equal for personal growth and professional growth. And so like last year, my big personal growth aspect, which to me, I feel like from a yin-yang perspective, personal and professional have to be there. They both have to have a purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, then it doesn't matter.
But why?
I have an underlying theme, regardless of it, is 2% improvement month over month for both personal and professional. Just 2%.
That's a lot, though. It gets compounded.
Yeah, but that's why I only focus on it in the month. And so, in last year, my big theme was, let's get healthy. Let's be healthy, mentally, physically. And it's tough. I mean, there's a lot involved. Looking at my sleep patterns, looking at how much exercise I get, what my weight was, what I'm eating.
So important.
What
balance, right? There's balance, and to achieve this balance is difficult. It really is. But once you find it, you get in a zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, part of that, and I'm really just finding I'm proving to myself that sometimes the bullshit that I speak actually is true. Even though I don't really feel it is, but some people might. And that, hey, what you do personally affects you professionally, and what you do professionally affects you personally.
Yeah, I don't think you can separate the two, because you would be disingenuous to say that, well, I'm one person at work, but a different person at home, right? Then you don't have personal integrity, right?
I believe that. And this is a big reason why it really, every time someone says, well, work-life balance, and I'm like, it always balances. What you want is live your best life, and living your best life includes both.
Of course.
So how can you have proper fulfillment from both personal and professional?
It's funny. We talk about exactly this thing. I spoke with my boss about this, and we talked about work-life balance. But I used to believe in work-life balance, but I don't believe in it. What I believe in now is life-energy balance. There are days or weeks.
I think that's a much better way to say it. The energy balance.
I mean, if I'm in the zone, I can work like 12, 14 hours focused, right? So it's not even about how much it's about the energy you put into things. And then, so it's actually, it goes back to something even biblical, like there's a time for everything under the sun, right? So there's a time to rest, there's a time to work. And I added something to my repertoire about a month ago, I'm getting an extra hour of sleep every weeknight. It's changed my life.
So how are you monitoring your sleep?
So I'm staying at work a little more than I used to, but I'm just getting the extra hour, and I found out that because it's hard for me to go to bed before 10 o'clock, right? Because it's things, and I also want to be there for my family. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? eh, Getting up at 5 in the morning, I did it for many, many years. I mean, for many years, I got up at 4:30. And I felt like I was a little bit sleep deprived. And now, as you said, we're all trying to be healthier, right? And I think that getting that extra hour of sleep has made me better professionally and personally.
Um, I mean, I absolutely agree. So this is where one of the first things I did is started focusing on my sleep for that part. And so that's why I bought this Aura ring, because it does a little bit more than like your Apple Watches and stuff like that, because it's closer to the actual pulse. Um, and of course, it also gives you some insights. But what I started finding quite a bit was, one, wasn't getting a restful sleep. What I was doing before bed was really making it difficult to stay asleep. And my deep sleep and REM sleep sucked. So I'm like, all right, well, what do I need to do to focus on? I just focused on one thing at a time. All right, focus on, I need to get into REM. I need to get into deep. You should have, there's some percentages and stuff like that. So length of time also matters. So like all of these things, they give you a sleep score. So they do kind of, gamify it a little bit. But it was tough because I had to start paying attention to, okay, how much exercise am I getting? Because if you don't get enough exercise, you don't sleep well.
Yeah, because your body needs that level of tiredness, I guess. I don't know if that's even the right word.
Evidently, we all have like this little inner chihuahua that needs to just run around and get tired. So
Exactly. I think it's important. Well, the thing I started doing, I mean, I don't do it all the time. Sometimes I have to be somewhere at a certain time, but generally I'm not using my alarm clock anymore. I'm not setting my phone up with it. I'm just gonna get up when I get up, right? And for me, that optimal time is somewhere between 5:30 and 6, and it's not 4:30 or 5.
there's actually a lot of research around that. And we've talked about Jordan Peterson, and this is one of the things I've said, and I didn't even realize it. I just always said, hey, because unless I have to get up earlier than I normally would, my alarm clock is set for the latest I want to get up. Outside of that, I just rarely do I do it. And for me, I actually like to start waking up around 5:30, 6 o'clock.
That's your time, your zone, and then you get up and you're just rested. And sometimes when you're really tired, you ever get the tiredness like where you get into REM right away, like you're asleep, you get up, you think it's the morning, and it's only like midnight. That's a very you've been deep into sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
sure.
think you've already completed the cycle, and you're not even a third through.
Yeah, and I really I just found like, all right, I'm just not staying in bed. Like once I'm awake, I get up and
You got to get up. Yeah.
right. And I do this for every day because I don't treat Mondays any different than Saturday. It's just it's another day. It's another day that I need to produce something for myself.
You need to produce value for the universe.
Yeah, that's at least that's what I try. I mean, I don't know that I always do that, but I definitely liked your statement of the energy balance, because if you put too much energy into your professional world, then the personal suffers. And same thing, if you put too much energy into the personal, well, then you might get fired because you're not producing there either. So
exactly. And the other thing is, like, I've learned, it's taken me a long time to learn this, is to, when you come home, unless there's an emergency, you shut that computer off. I'm home, that's it. I'm not going to be looking at work until tomorrow morning. And I wasn't always like that. I was just, maybe it was insecurity, maybe I just didn't understand energy balance. And what I've learned, a lot of it from reading Eastern philosophy, is that there are four wheels to the balance, right? Is the personal, your personal relationships, and then you've got the physical, your mental, emotional, and then the fourth would be your professional, right? And then maybe there's like overall there's the spiritual. But if we even not even go there, these four wheels, stress and anxiety and angst comes from the misalignment, the imbalance between those four wheels.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I definitely see that. I think that, as you were talking, it gave me an idea. It's difficult for me to kind of, just set the phone down because, hey, the world of technology never sleeps.
Right.
I got my folks are still working every day, many times, and something could happen. But what I could do is put my phone away and just create like a list. So if one of these people call or text, then go ahead and get up, because then I know it's an emergency, because they're not going to call me if it's not an emergency. So I just got to spend some time to do that. So, but I think that's a good idea. That might, especially, that, Monday through Friday. Hey, I should just, that might help me to relax a little bit more. Unless someone from, if it's not my mom or my dad or one of those people from work, hey, I can set that up to ring everywhere, and all right, well then I can react. But then the phone's not on me.
That's right. It's not something that's tethered to you. I just finished reading Thich Nhat Hanh's The Art of Living. What a fantastic book. He's such a great man, and the stuff he talks about is so basic and pure that and one of the things that he's taught me over the last 15 or 20 years is that we all search for, especially from a Western mindset, and even if you go to the to the East today, and everybody's becoming very industrialized, and work is such a big part of what we do. But Thich Nhat Hanh says that people say they're in search of happiness. He said there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way, meaning that happiness is not something that you're out there looking for. Happiness is the baseline. You have to start with happiness and then start giving it away. You can't take it, snatch it, or achieve it. And his point is that, can you drink a cup of tea in happiness? With happiness and bliss, can you brush your teeth with blissful joy, deep breathing? If you can't even achieve those basic things like the morning tea or breakfast with happiness, then you're never going to actually reach this elusive thing, because you cannot find happiness. You have to start with happiness. And that's a big lesson.
Yeah, I tend to differ slightly with that, but only maybe slightly different. I think happiness is a result. But I look at it, I need to find, no matter what I'm doing, like when I'm drinking my cup of tea, I want to be able to be in the moment of that tea, like being able to see like what other little nuances can I do, and just kind of enjoy that moment and try to be present right there. And I try to do that with with everything in which I do, and hopefully through and maybe this gets into the some of this part of the topic. I really believe life is a struggle, and that struggle, the result is happiness. But because if I lived on a tropical beach and had like your sister had servants just bringing me cocktails all the time and cooking my food, I don't know that I would enjoy that for too long.
At some point, the human spirit, that doesn't work for the human spirit. We are creatures of adversity, meaning that I had this conversation. Sometimes I talk to my students about this, and a lot of them are engineers, and I tell them, be grateful that there are problems. Be grateful that projects are difficult to manage, because if if there was no immutable laws of economics, if money was free and you could build anything, you wouldn't need engineering. You certainly wouldn't need engineers. And if there were no problems, you would have no reason to exist.
There'd be no innovation.
There'd be no innovation. So problems, we are here to solve problems.
All right. So didn't think this was going to go this particular direction. So does that mean, if we go back to a biblical aspect, if you happen to be in that Judeo-Christian mindset, then that we can thank Satan for all the innovation because he's the one that created all the problems?
That is interesting.
This literally, I'm not looking at this part, but I'm like, wait a minute.
I mean, at the risk of pissing off a lot of people, but you know, and maybe Satan is metaphorical, represents the dark side. And one thing that Buddhism has taught us is that it's yin yang, right? It's, if there was no evil, what would good be? Right? If there was no such thing as poor or mediocre, then what would excellent be? Right? So we live in a world of these dualities, these opposites, and problems. We are here to solve problems. And you look at, on the extreme side, you look at somebody, an innovator like a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or somebody like that, who these men solve big problems.
I swear, you and the ninja just like to bring up Elon Musk just to.
I know, we just do that to piss you off. Even the dark badass Sith says, problems of the darkness that enlighten your soul.
Yeah, and I'll take it back to the Satan aspect for a moment to kind of close that loop as I'm just following through that. So, a disruptor, like we're going to have disruptors in our life all the time. And that disruptor this is why I kind of go back to that. The results should be happiness. And so now we've been having to try to do everything we can to result in whatever that, Garden of Eden is for us. And maybe some of us never achieve that, which I think would be sad. But
I think a lot of it is also like we have problems. What's the opposite of not having problems? Living a life of just being a vegetable, or would that be the opposite? I mean, problems. It's, thank God we have the brains, the health to go out there every day and try to make a difference. Right? That's a gift. That's 24 hours you have been given to do something, and our lifespan is so short compared to the cosmic scale. It's not even the wink of an eye.
You're right, and I enjoy that struggle. This is like, on Sunday I did my monologue was part of this, and wanted to get into this piece of it. But I really enjoy the struggling through adversity, whether it be mental, whether it be physical, emotional, because when you get through that, you have now achieved something.
You've grown.
You know what I struggle with most, not that same aspect. So, and I've gone through this now a couple of times, and I thought when I went through it the second time it would be easier, and it wasn't. When I finished my doctorate, I believe I have many tendencies in depression. I just happen to do, I think, a good job of recognizing some of the things. But I was depressed for a little while. Well, now what?
I know, right? You just climbed a mountain.
Yeah, and then they're like, all right. So I wind up finding my next Everest, which was my MBA. And people go, "Oh, you got a doctorate. Why do you need an MBA?" Well, all my degrees were in computer science. It was easy. Like the doctorate was hard, but a different kind of hard. So I wanted to do something different. And I finished the MBA. I'm like, oh, okay, I know what's going to happen next. Yeah, I knew this was going to happen. But I know what's going to happen. I've got this under control. Finished the MBA. Same thing. Well, what now?
So this is it. This is our we have a longing as humans to continue to expand and grow. Khalil Gibran, the great poet and really just a great master of words, said that, and I quote, and I used this quote 20 years ago when I worked for a wireless startup, and we did difficult things. We built the first high-speed data network. The company was Metrocom. We did great things. We went out of business, but we built a network. We built a high-speed data network nationally. And I remember telling one of my colleagues, that Khalil Gibran said that, and when you reach the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And I had a hard time understanding that, but over the years, I've started to understand that once you tackle one mountain, there's always another one that you want, because that's your spirit. That's what you want, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm reminded of in the movie Gladiator when Maximus is talking to Caesar, and Caesar, or Maximus says, "Well, there's no one left to fight," and Caesar says, "There's always someone left to fight.
That's
There's always another war." And I seek that out. I honestly, if I did not have, I hate even saying honestly because it sounds like I'm not being honest. I firmly believe I have to have some type of adversity that I can struggle through in my life at all times. If not, I probably would wind up, overweight, dumb, and out of a job, like on the side of the road. I just don't think I could do it.
And this is something that I've struggled with, like not struggled with, because we talked about this a few months ago about imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So I always felt like if I'm not improving, then I'm not an imposter, but I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like, why wouldn't you want to keep improving, right? Isn't that what we're here for?
I think so. I mean, I think this is the difference between, high performers, mediocre, and low. Like mediocre performers want to do, and this is in my mindset. Like this is just what I seem to notice. They want to do just enough to not be noticed. Low performers tend to be, I think, one of two kind of people. They either just don't know how or don't care. And then your top performers, like they seek challenges, adversity, triumph. Let me move on to the next. Now that's just my personal reflection, but I think fortunately the extremes of the low performer and the high performers are the extremes. They're the minority, and I think that's actually somewhat of a good thing, because if the minority was those mediocre people, then a lot of mundane tasks that we need to have done won't get done. Your top performer is not going to do it because it's going to be boring. Your low performer, if they don't care or just not capable, can't do the task. So, they either are, apathetic or just not skilled. So I think I feel like it's good for the world, at least today, that the majority of people are average, because they're perfectly fine doing the same thing day in and day out. I could not do that, but and I don't even know if I'm right or wrong. It's just speculation.
I mean, average is I mean, there's what's
average, right?
Median, right? And also, as a society, we know that there are things we could do to improve the potential of everybody, such as education and training, and having doing things to empower people. So I think we still want to do that, not only in the business world but also in education and in other arenas where the human potential is so great. So when you see somebody who's not reaching their potential, maybe they weren't given that bar, or they weren't trained properly, or weren't given those opportunities. I mean, you think about that stuff sometimes,
Yes, I think about it quite a bit, and I've started looking at things maybe slightly different as of late, and part of it is let's take a let's say your boss comes to you, RB, and says, "Hey, I need you to lead this project." Project doesn't matter at the moment, but then like 2 weeks later, your boss calls you and says, "Yep, the project's been canceled." If you are relieved, then you are only willing to do that project through to some type of social pressure. If you were disappointed, then you really felt that project needed to be done. And if we did that with everything, then we might start focusing on the things that are truly important to us. But then I took it a step further. When I started taking a look at people on my team and the people that I deal with as my peers, if that person was no longer a part of the team, would the team be better or worse? And if the answer is, if they were no longer a part of the team, then the team would be better off, then, I'm just not going to spend time with those people. And,
that's an interesting way of looking at it. What if the answer is you don't know?
I think that's the part where just like when my peers and I disagree, I want to actually, we could say we disagree, but likely what we disagree on is a very small piece of that disagreement. And so our job at that point is to break down, well, really, where is that disagreement? Because we're probably not on the extremes. It's probably somewhere here. We just have to figure that out. And that happens by, I believe, having mutual trust in each other, that we're both operating in good faith, and to a common goal where we want the organization to be better. That's why we're a part of that. Or maybe it's your husband, wife, partner, whatever. And so if you are an honest broker, you try to find out, well, what really is it that we disagree on? And so that's where I want to focus my time. I don't want to focus on the stuff we agree on. Let's focus on those pieces. And so if I can't answer that question,
that's a problem.
Right. I think you should make decisions and make them fast, most of the time, right? Because the research that I have been reading, and I love it when people say, well, I've been researching. Well, no, I've been reading research. It's not my research, it's theirs. But they say that the brain takes the same amount of energy regardless if it's a big decision or a small decision. So for all those small decisions, things that don't provide that much significance, just make the decision and move on. And then your big decisions, set a date and then make your decision then. So, hey, this person's good or bad for the team. If I can answer that question, I just answer it and move on. If I can't answer it, well, that's when I now need to invest more time in figuring that out until I can answer that question. Hopefully I can answer it soon, but that also probably means on my part, I failed to do enough already to be able to answer that question. Now, hopefully they're new and I haven't had a chance to yet, but if they've been there for a couple of years and I can't answer that question, then shame on me.
Well, you said something earlier about, when talking about the dissertation, about pursuing something big, like jujitsu or your PhD. And you said that a lot of times regarding adversity, people just give up too soon, or they don't hang on that extra second that you got to hang on. A lot of life is just perseverance, right? There are plenty of smart people who don't succeed. Absolutely. Because they don't have perseverance. And there's plenty of people that you would say, you know what, they just know how to be resilient.
Very, very true. I can go back to my doctorate. I came up with my dissertation topic and I chose it.
What was the topic?
It has to do with utilizing smartphones in the enterprise to process, transmit, and store enterprise data. And so this was, finished it in 2014. But I started this process like in 2011. Now there was a big problem in 2011. There was no literature.
Oh, so how do you research?
Exactly.
Primary, empirical. How did you do it?
So I couldn't for a while. And so I was really bummed out. And then in 2012, this gentleman by the name of Dr. Charlie Miller wrote a book on securing iOS devices, and he had a whole chapter on the enterprise. And what he said in there is that, this was perfect. At least it gave me hope, because I was about ready to change topics. But the statement was, and I'll probably have to paraphrase this at this moment, that the aspect of utilizing smartphones in the enterprise has not yet been fully researched or known, or something along those lines.
But you knew that already.
Right. But because he said it, now I actually have a problem by someone that was in a, reviewed, peer-reviewed,
So like BlackBerries, that was the first enterprise mobile device, right?
Mhm.
A company that at one time controlled 60 to 70% of the market.
Yeah. But they weren't really doing anything more than like email, right?
That's all they were doing, right?
Right. It wasn't until the iPhone that came out to where now all of a sudden you've got all these mobile apps. You've got Office 365 type things. You've got SharePoint. You've got Word. You've got Excel. It became a handheld computer with no antivirus, no intrusion protection, no intrusion prevention, all these things that we had in the brick and mortar that just broke down all that brick and mortar. And so, that stuff hadn't been there. So bam. All right. Now I've got it. Then shortly after that, NIST came out with a special publication on how to secure smartphones for the enterprise, a whole guide. Boom, now I've got a control mechanism. Things started to happen. Then all of a sudden, because of it was a snowball effect. There was now going to conferences, all these peer-reviewed conferences, people talking about it. I had some debate as to, should people use containers? Is MDM good enough? Do you need this? Do you need that? There was debate. But up until that book came out, I was ready to give up.
Wow.
What if I had given up? I wouldn't be here right now because
you wouldn't be here, no.
Because as soon as I started doing that, I started being able to go to conferences and started being able to talk about these things, looking at the forensics aspects, utilizing all my other knowledge and getting on all these different podcasts and shows and speaking at conferences. I became a sought after person for that time period and got my doctorate in 2014. But it happened fast. It took me 3.5 years in total.
Did you go full time?
So yeah, it was full time. So the big difference, and there's always people that they'll say PhD, and actually what Jason and I have is a Doctor of Science, and so there's just a slight difference. So a PhD,
DSC, right? It's
yep,
DSC,
right. So the biggest difference is as a PhD, you aren't an expert already in your field, and you go become an expert in something specific through research. As a DSC, you already have an expertise in the field, and now you're bringing the academics into it. And so you had to already have at least 5 years of working as a professional in cybersecurity.
Domain expertise.
Right. And so our full time was you were in class once a week, every week for many hours. I mean, it was like 6 to 10 once a week. For it was 2 years worth of classwork, and there was no break. Like there was no well, I mean, you had like some semester stuff, but you had like a week. It was a week between semesters. You went all semesters, and sometimes you did multiple classes because when it came to elective time.
So you go 6 to 10 hours straight, and then the rest of the week you're researching and things,
doing your classwork, learning how like. It could be everything from, all right, you're going to study, like this one class could be specifically just on quantitative analysis, all the different methodologies that are involved in quantitative. So, what does that mean? You've got experiment. Well, you've got true experiment. You've got a quasi experiment. You've got mixed method, aspects, a whole bunch of different things that can involve around quantitative. Well, then you've got qualitative. And what are all those ones? To be honest, I don't remember a lot of the qualitative because my actual experiment was a quantitative quasi-experimental methodology, focusing on a specific time period of iOS devices, because at the time iOS was the largest in the enterprise. And so what were the versions that were available during that time period? And then what were all the exploitable things that were available? And then we configured in one test group, because you had 2 different population groups that were out there. So there was 15 variations based on the breakdown of the percentages of the Apple versions that were in the market at that time. We applied Apple's their MDM capabilities, which is their policy configuration. And then we used a leading container that was available. In this case, it was Good Technologies container. And then we ran all the attacks on all of them. And then what was the result? So, because part of it was, how can you significantly reduce the risk of compromise to a smartphone when it is processing, storing, and transmitting enterprise data? So, which is, how do you do it? And so there's people out there, many people, that said MDM is good enough, containers suck, vice versa, containers are great, MDM not good enough. So at that particular point in time, I proved, based on certain compromises that were available, what was better. And no one had done it. And that was the most important part.
Right. Wow.
And then I expanded upon that, looking at, because it was really about integrity monitoring to me. So if if you can determine a change fast enough, most likely that change was not authorized. And an unauthorized change is likely a hacker. So that's how things started snowballing into the other pieces. Probably just turned everyone off that was listening at this point.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Wow. But that's a lot of adversity.
Yeah, but that adversity aspect was, I was ready to quit. I was like, all right, I got to find a new topic. I had to start all over. I had a lot of stuff ready to go, and if I had, but I waited, and it was either October or November of 2012 when Charlie's book came out, and I was 2 years into the program. I was ready to pack it up, and then things just snowballed.
Because when you're pursuing a PhD, there's no guarantee that you're going to get it.
No, there's why a lot of people are ABD, which is basically anything
all
but dissertation. All but dissertation. Yeah,
that happened to a friend of mine. So it's rough. Wow, that's great.
But I mean, it's that adversity, that struggle. I enjoy it. It's hard for me to relate to people who are good with being content and status quo. And I was listening to this thing. So on LinkedIn Learning, this guy, you probably know Dan Arietta, the half-faced beard guy. He's a professor out of Duke in psychology, and he was this one LinkedIn Learning thing. And I've read a bunch of his work before, and he really talks quite heavily on this whole default bias. So why people overvalue their current situation over a new situation. And what he really said is, if you go through and you evaluate, especially because it's fairly easy to see when it comes to looking for a new job potentially, if the other job opportunity comes around and you say they're neutral, then you should absolutely take the other job, because we overvalue our current situation.
That's interesting. You know what that reminds me of? So maybe you don't remember this. Maybe it was in the 70s. So you may not remember.
Probably not. I was born in 75.
Yeah. So let's make a deal. Let's make a deal with a TV show.
Okay. Well, I know the show.
It was a game show, Monty Hall, right? So and this really goes on to basic math theory, but most people never got it. And it was only years later when I found out what the fundamental mistake people were making. So what they would do is they would have 3 curtains. Behind one curtain was like a gag gift, like it was like a goat or something, right? It was basically a loser gift. Behind one of the curtains was a new car, and behind another curtain was nothing, right? So what would happen was people would choose they would choose the nothing, let's say, or it was something where they would make a choice. No, they would have different levels of prizes. So they would choose a prize, and then they were asked, do you want to switch? And a lot of people think it's oh no, here's what happened. 2 of the curtains were empty and nothing, and one of them had a car. So they would choose a curtain, right? They would choose a curtain, and Monty Hall would say, okay, I'm not going to show you what you've chosen, but I'll open up another curtain. So let's say you chose curtain number 1 and the car was behind curtain number 2.
Right.
What he would do is he would open up curtain number 3 and show you it was nothing, right? So they would ask you, do you want to keep this curtain, which you haven't opened yet, or do you want to switch to curtain number 2? And a lot of people thought it was a 50-50 proposition, and it's not. 2/3 of the time, you're better off switching curtains.
Yep.
And you totally get it, right? But it's very tough. So one day I tried to explain this to somebody. I must have been like we were drinking or something at a party or something, and it was the most ridiculous thing because intuitively I was told by people that are very knowledgeable about mathematics that it's 50-50, and it's not.
No, it's not, because you now have because you already eliminated one choice, right?
It's how you explain it that's important, right?
Right. It's
the explanation is that no matter which curtain, assuming all 3 curtains are closed, no matter which curtain you choose, you have a 2/3 probability of being wrong, which means 2/3 of the time it's in the other 2 curtains.
Yep.
The fact that he's showing you an empty curtain now means that you have a 2/3 chance of winning by switching.
Right. It's different. It's very similar when I say, okay, what's the probability if you flip a coin that you're going to get heads or tails? Well, people are like, oh, well, 50-50. Well, what's the probability that you're going to get heads twice in a row? Oh, well, 50-50. No, it's not. The more times
it's only 50-50 after you flip the first coin, then
right.
The next coin is 50-50.
Right. It's when you say 2 times in a row, that little piece means nope, no longer. That's why in gambling it's a real big scam when you have to have multiple things happen at once. Like when you do horse racing, what do they call it? The the trifecta and stuff like that. You're gonna lose, bro. Don't do it.
Yeah.
The house always wins, and that's how they get you.
Did you ever read that book? It was written in the early 90s, I think, called Innumeracy.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know that I did.
It's about how, as a society, we have become. It's Innumeracy. I think it was the same guy who wrote Cultural Illiteracy, but Innumeracy is about the fact that people don't have a fundamental understanding of relative numbers. So if you take logarithmic information, put it on a log chart, you can do anything with stats, right? You cut off the bottom of the chart, whatever, and you can manipulate people, and which is what's happening today, right? People are manipulated by faulty data.
It's interesting to talk about that because when the Ninja and I, it was last Wednesday, I think, we got into this, and this gets into a little bit of my psyche. So I was always told, I don't remember, but early on that my IQ was 160 or something like that.
Wow.
And so I took an IQ test not too long ago and kind of pissed off because it was 141.
Well, you're a dummy. I always knew you were a dummy.
Right. Now, the thing that they broke down into all that, and I've always known this, I have a problem with spatial configuration. Okay, well, here's the thing. Now
they show you 4 shapes, and which is the next shape?
The patterns I'm good with. It's looking at all right, how can you recollect or the human body, if in a 3D, can you see what's going to wind up being on the other side of that? Yeah, that doesn't do that. Or all right, you and the missus are in architecture. All right, you're going to build a building. Well, you got something that's in 2D, and it's going to wind up being not in 2D when it's after it gets off that blueprint. That I have a difficulty with. Pattern recognition, numbers, all those things, great. But evidently, regardless of all this stuff, that's what brings for me, my IQ down. Maybe
it made you humble. It made you humble.
But I was just it was kind of funny. I'm pissed off that I'm in the top 1% in the entire world.
So yeah, 140 sounds like it's 140. There's a big difference between 130 and 140.
Yeah, 100 is average, right? So I'm pissed off that it wasn't higher. Which would be the same thing to me. I get angry when there's not, or depressed. It's one of the extremes when there's not another Mount Everest for me to climb.
Right. Well, that's the competitive. It's not even competitive. It's just you want to keep doing better.
You know,
Man, adversity is a topic that I think we can only relate to adversity from a non-academic sense, from our own personal struggles, right? When we, and the fact that when you give up, and when do you give up? And again, the reason people give up is because there's still no guarantee that you'll make it, right? There's still not that guarantee, and so I think the other part of adversity that I've seen is it's all relative. If you No, I mean, I'm an immigrant, right? So to me, I mean, we live in a great country. I mean,
are you an immigrant, or were you forced to come over here?
well, I was born.
Your parents came here, right?
I
So they
guess
just kind of brought you with them.
I was 6 years old, so I guess I was forced to come here.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did. But what's interesting about the immigrant experience is that as an immigrant, and not only as an immigrant, but as somebody who's traveled, and you've traveled, when you travel and you see, what are we fighting about? I mean, we have a great country where we're living so much better than 95% of the world, right? And we don't know how good we have it. And so when it comes to adversity, I have seen people overcome adversity in other parts of the world. And I can tell you that adversity is also relative, that if you today, and somebody joked about, I think it was on one of our podcasts today, some of the kids that are growing up today, if their Amazon package is 3 days late, that's adversity. That's not adversity. That is not adversity. Adversity is you living in a village and your great-grandfather cleaned the sewers, your grandfather cleaned the sewers, your father cleaned the sewers, and guess what? There's a 99% probability that you're going to clean the sewers, because you'll be doing that from the age of 8, because you'll not get an education. That's extreme, but so
it's a lot of the world still, unfortunately.
Child labor. I mean, people think, so I love when people lecture me about capitalism, and I'm like, stop. Or because I think there's a pendulum, right, between the whole union non-union thing, and I'm like, when people lecture me about capitalism and say, okay, you know what, I'm like, wait a minute, we live in a society, in a rich country, where we work 5 days a week. That wasn't the norm for throughout most of human history.
Wait, you only work 5 days?
I mean, you know what I mean? So
I say this like right news, like, yeah, I get off at 5 today. And I'm like, you only work half a day?
I know, right? 12 hours, that's a half a day. No, but I mean, generally, people do not realize, that for most of human history, if you were not in the very upper echelon, or you were the landlord, if you were a serf or indentured servant, you worked 7 days a week. That's just the way it was. It's only in the last 80 to 100 years that things have really changed.
And really only in today's first world countries. And so, we can, and
right.
It's not even everywhere in Europe. A lot of people want to say, oh, all of Europe's first world. No, a lot of Europe is not.
Even going to India. So India has changed a lot, but traditionally, India, you work 6 days a week. Now you do get more holidays, I guess, but people work 6 days. At least they work a half a day. So I know when we were in India and I was very young, my dad was working as an engineer. He would work Monday through Friday, and Saturday he went in for half a day. That was the rule, right? Even now, I know companies in India that work 6 days a week, unless you're fortunate enough to work for an American company or a multinational company that are more progressive, and they don't make you work the weekend. But working Saturdays is a traditional part of the professional life in India. So we don't really know how good we have it, and we think we have adversity. So adversity is relative.
Yeah, well, I think yes, adversity is definitely relative. Part of what I started to go with when we talked about some of these other countries, because I've seen it, I think unfortunately it's worse than adversity. Some of them, like, they're truly suffering. Like, they're suffering through life, and they would like to just have adversity.
Right. That's even beyond adversity. That's just suffering Yeah, I mean, maybe I think I was wrong. I can't call that diversity. That's just a
Some of them-
different way of living, right?
right. I mean, think about some of the places where you talked about, hey, like their great grandfather, grandfather, father, they're probably going to also
That's
be,
different.
they're all
That's not
going to
even
be working
diversity.
in the sewer. Well, what happened? Like those same people in that particular like village, what happens when the well runs dry? That's a real problem. They don't even know if where they could possibly get another, they could dig back down. How long is that going to take? But is the water even clean? Like that's still a problem in a lot of places in the world where they just don't have clean water to drink.
Oh, yeah.
We take a lot of those things.
We take so
granted.
much for granted, and we, sometimes and you when you have that sort of more global perspective, or you have been lucky enough to travel, and you say, wow, people are really upset about the most mundane things, like you already are living an amazing life, and the opportunities that we have in living in a first world country, the opportunities we have to learn and to grow. I mean, you can get on the internet now and learn anything. Go to Coursera. Do you know, you probably know this, Coursera's got a program with, I think it's either the London School of Economics or one of the really good schools in London, where you could get a 3-year online undergraduate degree for 20,000 euros. I mean, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, well, and the access to information just in general, that this gets back to the problem. How do you know which course to do? Like, should you go to LinkedIn Learning? Should you go to Coursera? It gets,
or edX. How about edX?
I mean, it gets to be a different. I mean, it'd still be cheaper, but then I'm just waiting for. I unfortunately believe that the Biden administration is going to cancel the majority of student loans. I'm actually, even though I have a lot, I'm not in favor of it. I think what I would like to see is the Biden administration be able to get a law passed that allows student loans to be included in bankruptcy, because why is that debt the only one that's not permitted if you're going to go bankrupt?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's
but then and I largely blame again the government as well. So why were student loans able to get this far out of rates? Right, when we saw the cost of tuition at universities
going crazy, like
skyrocket from the early 90s till today. It's like 500%. Like there's some numbers crazy. Numbers crazy.
My first semester in engineering school, the tuition was $2,000, $2,100 for a semester tuition, right? Same school today, one semester is going to cost you $35,000.
Yeah, it's too much. So, and again, I go back. It's the government's fault. The government, like these schools, every single university for the most part, there's a couple that are for profit, but almost every single one of them is either a state school, which means it's a state entity, so they should definitely not be worrying about a profit, or they're a not-for-profit school. Well, not-for-profit.
What does that mean?
Yeah. Not-for-profit doesn't mean they're a charity, but it means they should be not overly, not getting to the point where all of a sudden
in the state school system across the country, the highest paid employees are the football coaches. You know that.
Yeah.
The coach of Alabama is making $10 million a year.
Yeah.
So not for profit is a relative thing, and maybe what guaranteed student loans have done is that they have brought in so much money that at some point it says the schools know that they can keep raising the tuitions. And you've created a system where the professors get tenure, and there's like this. They've created almost an alternative universe of educational inflation, and I believe that the internet and new ways of learning are going to level the playing field. And I believe, except for the top tier schools, such as your
University of Michigan,
We have to put a plug in there. Except for the top tier schools. I believe the second tier schools are in big trouble because they will not be able to justify $75,000, $80,000, $90,000 tuitions. They just won't be able to do it.
I think also to that, to the extreme, because back in all these things in extremes, I think the schools that are going to now thrive, community colleges.
That's interesting.
I think those 2-year schools
Yeah.
are going to see a significant rise because
could
they're
go to
almost like trade schools.
You could go to community college, get straight A's, and transfer, and your degree will have the 4-year college name on it. So you just saved 2 years of. You saved half the money. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, and I tend to believe that we should have some type of conscription.
Yes. 1 or 2 years military. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know that it needs to be military. Maybe you are someone that's anti-war. Okay, fine. Then go do the
service.
Yeah, you could go to Red Cross. You could do. There's plenty of things.
You know how it would transform society. You would take people in that formative age of 17 to 18. You would bring them discipline, structure, a code of civic sense, a code of service. You would transform society.
I think so. And I think you would do it very quickly. You could do it within a generation, I believe.
Yeah. And I think you don't have to look any farther than Israel. Israel, have you ever met people from Israel? They have discipline, integrity. They know what service is. They know what hardship is. They know what adversity is. And they have been tested. And at that age, you need that level of training and discipline and rigor, I believe.
I agree. I think and actually, I've met many of the people from Israel. I mean, I say many for me. It's a significant amount from my point of view, but they are all kind, but not weak.
Not weak.
They are some of the kindest people that I've met. Like they, are genuinely just kind people. I enjoy working with them. I can't say I have anyone that became a friend, but I've had a lot of like professional interactions with them. And actually, most people from other countries that I've had a professional relationship with, I've had very positive experiences with.
Yeah, but remember, you have interactions with people that are your peers who are also highly professionally advanced and educated. So you're not. It's not a random sampling.
Yeah, it's definitely not random. True. So all the places you've been when you've traveled, RB, where's your favorite place that you've traveled to?
Wow, that's. I mean, it's about memories, right? So favorite place, like I know from a personal and family point of view, I always enjoyed going back to Bombay as a child, visiting family. Those summers in India were really influential to me because I got to connect very deeply with family, even though I lived in the US. So from a personal sense, that was my favorite. From just a vacation point of view, I kind of enjoy it all. Like I think the changing it up. I like going on cruises. Of course, now you can't because whatever, but I love cruises, but I also like a good Jamaica. I've been to Jamaica 5 times. Negril Beach is amazing. I just love Negril Beach and but I think that even more than the place, if you go on vacation with the right people, then that becomes a favorite vacation, right? It's about who you go with, right? If you think about it, if you go with the right people, like I went to Europe a few years ago and took an 11-day cruise, and I enjoyed that because you meet so many people from all over the world, and you're having a burger, you're at sea, you're in the middle of the Mediterranean, and you don't know who you're talking to. I ended up talking to a guy who was a defense. He was a manufacturer of military equipment in South Africa. Nicest guy you ever want to meet. You would never guess this guy makes military equipment. So I think it's about the people you meet in these vacations. and that makes it your favorite, right?
Right.
If you went somewhere and you didn't meet interesting people, then it's maybe not so great.
For me, and it's a place I'll probably never go back to. Not mainly because I don't want to spend 23 hours on a plane, which is Singapore. I had to go to Singapore, several times. Love Singapore, and it was something I never expected.
I want to go. I've heard it's amazing.
It is, and I had to learn a little bit about it, but hey, it was a British colony. So their native language is still English. Their second language is Mandarin. So like everyone there speaks English.
Yeah. How was the food?
Oh my gosh, amazing! Like, what do you want? Like you can get it. So I showed up there, and it's like, I mean, like I said, I had just been traveling for 23 hours, and I get to the hotel, which is also not what I was expecting. It was basically like a closet, I felt like. But the service was great. So I go down, I talk to the concierge, I'm like, I need to get some food. I'm starving. Where can I go? And he's like, okay, well, Mr. Ford, do this, walk here. I'm like, well, what kind of food's there? And he says to me, whatever you want. It's all there. It's right here. Just walk. It's like, pick a spot. All the food right there. That whole strip. Amazing.
The street food is supposed to be really good there.
Yeah, we did that when I was there doing work with the Singapore government, and I had that at lunchtime because we're at the actual like downtown district where the hotels and stuff were. It was just restaurant after restaurant after restaurant, and so you just kind of look, and it's the first time I had prawns in this particular way, where I'm like, oh, this is where it's kind of silly. The waiter gave me the menu, and he didn't think or whatever. I didn't know to ask. But the menu's in Chinese. It's in Mandarin. Well, I had no idea that this time the native language was, English. So I'm just pointing to what I looks like, and he's like, okay. Like didn't say anything, nothing happened. So it comes, and like, okay, I'm thinking, all right, well, they're prawns, they're king prawns. Well, it comes, and it's the whole thing's like deep fried, the whole thing, shell and all.
Wow.
So I look around, and there's a couple sitting next to me, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you all. How am I supposed to eat this thing? Because it's not the way we do it here in the United States. And so the guy there, he goes, well, there's plenty of different ways. I don't really like eating the tail, so I like to start right at the head and suck all the brains out and just keep on going. And I'm like, all right, well, so I did, and I'm like, oh, it's pretty tasty. So I did. But then, his girlfriend, I don't know, or wife, I don't know. She said, next time you could just make sure you just ask for the menu in English. Like everyone here speaks English. Like, I'm like, well, I'm a dumb American, no idea. So I love Singapore. I don't know that I could go. I don't know that I could withstand the 23 hours in the air anymore. I just did that too often. So then I have two other spots that I really enjoy. I really love London, and I love Geneva.
All right.
And Geneva is just old architecture. It's great. Amsterdam was fun. Not that I partake in any of those kind of things, but Amsterdam was probably some of the best place you could get just like any different kind of seafood you wanted. And it's like a bar town. It felt like I was like in Austin, Texas. You just keep going from like one little bar to the next, and everything's a little bit different.
Have you been to Paris? Paris is one of my favorite cities.
I hate Paris.
Really? I love Paris.
I might as well just go to New Orleans. I could have a city that smells like urine, so I could just go to the stay in the United States. I didn't mind Paris. I do like to joke, like Paris and London to me have the exact same weather, so everyone's always like, "Oh, Paris is always sunny." I'm like, it's like hardly ever sunny, just like London. It's always cloudy.
London is more soggy weather, I would say.
Yeah.
London's beautiful. I mean,
I enjoy them. I like the food in Paris is unbelievable. Like if you're a foodie, like come on, like you got
I have
whatever you want.
my college buddy lives in Dresden. He works there, and he's got family there. So I visited him for his 55th birthday a few years ago. Surprise visit because his wife said come and visit him, and I got to hang out with him and his German buddies for a couple of days. Dresden is absolutely a beautiful city.
Yeah.
And I can't believe this is the same city that was firebombed. Like, it was not that long ago, right? But just an incredible city, clean, and I love the fact that you could go anywhere and you could walk around with beer, and it was just kind of cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely different in Europe. It's very odd the types of laws that people care about in Europe versus here in the United States.
It's weird. It's so weird. Like went to Europe. When I went to Europe, my daughter could sit at the bar. Wasn't a big deal. Here, you can't do that. I mean, Rome was absolutely a great city, and I got to meet some really interesting people. You sit at the bar of a basically a 4-story hotel, and the woman who runs it inherited it at the age of 18. So she's been running this hotel.
Wow.
And she's 85, right? So she's been doing it for like 70 years. And the bartender says, if you wait long enough, he said at 8:30, this 85-year-old woman will come up here. She'll sit at that table. She'll have a drink, have her dinner, and then she'll leave. And then they have a piano bar. And I said, tell me her story. And her story was her father died, left her the hotel. From that hotel rooftop, you could see all of Rome. People have it's very interesting type of experience, to see something like that, a different world.
Yeah, very much so. And this is why I kind of like some of those not just towns in Europe, but even here in the United States. I like going to like not like the touristy places. Like that's Like I don't like chain restaurants. I don't.
No, you want to go where. So you want to go where the people hang out. And I was very fortunate. So I think we spoke about this. So before I came back to New York in August, when we first met, I was in DC.
Right.
And then I was on a project, and then I was sent to Alaska. And in Alaska, in Anchorage, and what was great, I was working for a great company, and essentially we worked, on a military base. So we worked at 4 nights. We worked 4 days a week. I mean, generally the crews work 4 days, and Fridays were pretty much.
And then depending on the year, it was 4 nights a week or 4 days a week. Just
exactly. I was there in the summertime, so
there you go.
So Monday through Thursday night were kind of like working nights, But once Thursday night came around, the weekend was really Thursday night through Sunday, right? And I became a regular. It was like Cheers almost. I became a regular at 2 of the most interesting dive bars in Anchorage, where I knew everybody. And you would go there, you would sing along. The drinks were relatively cheap. They had really good bands. They had Samoan bands, who would play old time rock and roll. Very, very interesting. And because of where Anchorage is, it's actually a hub for a lot of the transportation. So you see a lot of people that are traveling from other parts of the world coming there. You meet interesting people. And one thing I learned about talking to real Alaskans, people who live in Alaska, to them, they refer to us as the lower 48, right? And they think of themselves as an independent country. They certainly have the resources and the money, and they're independent. And so don't tread on them,
Well, the only thing they don't have is enough population that lives there to continue to procreate.
It's unless you live there, it's so interesting. I mean, you just meet people, and the summer is very short. And yes, I have seen the sun. I have seen the sun at 1:30 in the morning.
So, did you dive into the Pacific at all? Did you take a plunge?
No, I didn't do that.
I don't think I could do that. no matter what time of year it is. I know people do, but I'm like, I'm not doing that.
But
Not in my future. I'd rather do my 3 minutes at negative 171 than be submerged in water.
so where do you go for 171? Because I'd like to do the immersion of the cold and the hot,
Yeah, so she doesn't have that, but you just look for anyone that does cryotherapy. That's what it's called, cryotherapy. So it's liquid nitrogen that's gassed, and
You go in there.
yeah, you go into it. So the one that I do, your head's above. There's some that do a full submersion, but that can be a little bit.
Are you going into the liquid?
No, it's just the gas coming out to you.
And how long can you stand that?
So they don't do it more than 3 minutes.
It's a lot, though.
3 minutes is a long time.
3 minutes at minus 171.
Yeah,
That's a little wacko, if you ask me.
it's a lot. I didn't start off with that. So they start to, again. This is funny. We talk about, oh, well, there's a big difference between like 130 and 140. I don't know. There's a big difference between negative 120 and negative 170.
Now
It's
that's
both
adversity.
really, really cold.
But isn't that adversity for your body? That's what you're doing, right?
Yeah. So the idea is, and you're in that cold because the body's very resilient. Like we talk about resiliency. Our human body is very resilient amongst anything. It doesn't matter if it's a virus like COVID, a common cold, a bacteria. We're very resilient. We can handle a lot of things. So as you're going in that cold, all the blood goes to your organs. And so it constricts up there. So you're getting all that.
You're kind of like shrinking
Yep.
almost.
All right, you're doing that. You're protecting your vital organs. And then when you step out, all the blood flushes back through your body. And so it helps to remove like blood clots and
It's cleansing.
yeah.
I gotta try that.
You feel great. I absolutely love it. Now, ideally, and there's various schools of thought on this. I don't know how much it really matters, but there's various schools of thought. So like TK, which says that like when he does it, like it's good to be on like one of the shaking plates where you go there and kind of like shake. Well, there's some people that believe in that. There's some people that don't. I don't know how much that matters or not. What I feel is, what I'm trying to do. We talk about the next goal. So, like my goal for this month is try to reduce inflammation in the body, because inflammation is not a good thing.
Causes pain.
Right. So I'm doing different things with nutrients in the foods that I eat, as well as cryotherapy.
Cryo definitely helps you with that.
I'm trying to reduce these things.
I'm gonna look into that.
I love it. It's great. Now, so I've got the back here. I've got the an infrared sauna. I'm looking to try to get in a little steam sauna. I mean, they're small. It's literally only 2.
And you need a frozen room.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to deal with liquid nitrogen though. Like that. Like I'm going, what could go wrong? If it's steam, I turned it on. Like I don't know what could go wrong with liquid nitrogen. I'm not like it's still liquid nitrogen. And if that liquid nitrogen touches your skin, it's frostbite. You're done, right? It's liquid nitrogen. It's not meant to touch the human body. But as a gas, it's just cold. So
Interesting.
It's fun. I love it. It is a willpower. But like they'll tell you, like, okay, just stop whenever you want to stop. So I started off at the low setting. Like they got 3 settings, 1, 2, and 3. 3 being the highest.
Wow.
Some people never like, the missus is like, oh, I can only do the number 2. I'm like, it's negative 140 degrees. Like that's not a bad thing. It's negative 140 degrees. There's no place on earth that's negative 140 degrees.
Wow.
But I'd rather do that than dive into the Pacific Ocean from Alaska.
Yeah.
Because now you're submerged in water. Now your whole body's trying to fight. I don't want that kind of adversity.
Conduction is different than convection.
Yeah.
So we've covered adversity of the soul, adversity of the spirit, of the working person, of the personal family person, and of the physical body. So adversity is agnostic, right? It is not good or bad. It's what we are. We are made to overcome challenges. If we are fortunate, we are given enough challenges that we can overcome.
I think so. Well, my friend, as always, it's good to see you. Hey, and I'll get to see you for a first time in person. you know, we could just all we need Renu to do is just leave the credit card, and then we'll.
That's it. That's it. Leave that Amex, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be good.
Thanks. Be well, my friend.
All right, take care, my friend. Everyone out there, thank you for stopping by. See you next time.